A policy into action. Arizona and Texas National Guard troops start deploying to the border.
Texas vowed to send 250 National Guard troops by Monday. Arizona says they'll send 150 by next week.
The Texas National Guard has operated along the Texas-Mexico border for decades. The Texas National Guard is a force that is ready.
This is a common trick that liberals pull on us. They talk about illegal immigration as if it's a victimless crime. What about the American people? What about the taxpayers who have to fund this?
President Trump taking on two foes, China and Russia, with tough talk and tough policy.
I'm not saying there won't be a little pain, but we're going to have a much stronger country when we're finished.
Trump is a negotiator. You know, talk hard, then maybe concede a bit. He's much cleverer than anyone gives him credit for.
Do you want to keep your personal information private on Facebook? Well, then you're going to have to pay to do that.
But you have an opt-out button. Please don't use my profile data for advertising.
We don't have an opt-out at the highest level. That would be a paid product.
Welcome to New York, the site of the latest Pete defeat today.
All that trash talk's going to come back to hurt him. You know, it's when you start yapping and you can't back it up. It is Masters Weekend. What are we going to do today, Ed?
We're going to play a little golf.
I feel like Ed struggled a little bit in sports in high school, and now he's like making his comeback. I don't mean that.
Wait, that was Pete. Clank, 3-point shoot.
Why are we reliving all of Ed's glory?
They didn't show my win.
No, they did. They already showed you
before
right before. We weren't paying attention.
Yeah, we were.
I think Ed emails our team the night before saying, "Can we play every time I beat?"
Oh, there it is.
Look at this.
This is a 9-hole putt-putt course on our plaza in honor of the Masters. I'm a good putt-putt, I gotta say. Now my regular swing not so good, but that putt-putt.
I need a gallery, so come on out. 48th and 6th. We'll have Ed's Army out there.
Abby, what do you think?
I'm not going to take sides.
You can't play Switzerland on this. You gotta.
You know, you've lost so many times recently. I think I'm going to give it to Pete.
Oh!
I feel for him.
I feel for him.
Yeah.
I might actually throw it just so he feels a little better.
Yeah.
So if I lose today, I didn't really lose. I was letting him
golf
win.
clap?
Have you practiced it? Get ready, America.
We're excited.
Well, good morning to all of you, and I'm glad you guys are up because you both had a long day yesterday. I don't even think you slept.
I slept a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, because I wanted to be ready
I got
to
you
go.
guys Dunkin' Donuts coffee. We're good?
Thanks for the coffee.
You bought us Dunkin'. We're all good. I love your mug. Keep calm and let Isabel handle it. I like that. Whoever got that, fantastic.
Well, we are waking up to a lot of news this morning, as we always do, and we want to begin with a Fox News alert. Policy into action. Arizona and Texas National Guard troops start deploying to the border. They started overnight. This is something the president has talked about all week long, and now he's taking some action.
That's right. DOD Defense Secretary James Mattis signing a deployment order allowing for up to 4,000 National Guard troops to be a part of a mission on the southern border. This coming as you know, last week we reported on the caravan. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that the Trump administration says the number of attempted border crossings up by 200% month to month since March of last year. So there's this feeling of imminence, and states are already pitching in. You've got Texas saying they'll send 250 National Guard members by Monday. Arizona, 150. I'll be clear, this is a Title 32 mission, which means federalized state troops, which means governors have a lot of control over when and where troops go. But ultimately, the feds are paying for it, and a lot of focus on the border.
And that coordination is so key, Ed. But you look, not all governors are wanting to implement this. I was listening to the governor of Oregon saying this is not even something we're looking at. Yeah. We don't want to help.
Well, in part, I want to ask you, Pete, because for the last year, we've been hearing the Trump administration say border crossings are way down because of his policies. Now you're saying border crossings are way up.
Attempted border crossings, a lot of them interdicted. I think there's a sense that get in before the border is sealed. And I think when you continue to have this pattern of, well, we want to make a DACA deal, we want to have a wall, we want to control the border, that uncertainty is incentivizing people to make the dash while they can.
Because you have the catch and release policy, right?
Yeah,
so
well, that's true.
Basically, once you get through the border and you say, I need a safe place to go, then you're able to be released until the courts figure out what to do with them.
As long as you get a foot on the ground on this side of the border, you're released. And then you're supposed to go back to court within weeks or months. Sometimes it takes a year or longer. And many times this migrant that comes across is basically here illegally, doesn't go to court.
That's
So
right.
they stay in the country. They stay here.
So
And we have no way of
president-
monitoring them.
So the president had just signed a memo ordering the end to this policy, the end to catch and release, and his attorney general, Jeff Sessions, now ordering zero tolerance at the border. So they are cracking down. They are cracking down hard. If you were trying to cross the border last night, it was probably a place you did not want to be.
Well,
That's right. Immigrants, here's what it means for you. Immigrants caught in the U.S. cannot be released while their cases play out in court. They've got to be detained, basically. Departments will share information as well. That's often a big problem where one part of the government doesn't know about someone who's here illegally. Federal prosecutors to make prosecuting criminal immigration offenses a priority. Put it to the top of the list. And U.S. attorneys along the border are going to prosecute all referrals from the Department of Homeland Security of illegal entry. So they've got to get better at this, government officials, and I think the administration is trying to do that. Say, look, everyone's got to start talking to each other, and we've got to start coordinating it to stop the number of illegal immigrants coming across the border.
There's two parts to this conversation. There's the catch and release program, which you talked about, Ed. Someone gets their foot in the country. The current before this new memorandum, you could be released for a couple of years and then expected to voluntarily appear back, often which doesn't happen. So there's a de facto non-policy. So this catch and release policy, the memorandum says that DHS has to submit a report to this president within 45 days about how they're going to do it. Because if you're catching and not releasing, well, that means you're holding while they get their day in court or a review of asylum or whatever they're trying to do.
So U.S. taxpayers are paying to keep the folks who are here illegally detained, fed, all the rest of it.
A lot of people will point out that we're also paying for a lot of the welfare benefits of illegals that come here and stay as well. Yeah. So the cost-benefit thing is a little murky because if you're paying to deport them, it's a different thing. So that's one issue. The second one is zero tolerance. And right now, I think you've made this point, Abby, we didn't have our arms around what these policies really were.
I don't think the majority of American people fully understood because they weren't articulated at the top levels. So you hear this all started from the BuzzFeed piece about these migrants coming over, many of them from Honduras, through Mexico, and now they're being dispersed, and we're following that one closely. But I think people were scratching their heads saying, I didn't realize that this was policy. I didn't realize that if you put one foot over the border, you said, I need a safe haven, that you're basically here until they figure out what to do with you. And as you said, taxpayers are paying for that.
Right.
So a lot of people are mad at the policies that have been put in place up till now. And by the way, this is not the first time that National Guard troops have been sent to the border. You look at reaction to what President Trump has done, and people seem to be up in arms. But you look throughout history, even most recently, President Obama back in 2010 sent 1,200 National Guard troops for the drug war. 2006, G.W. Bush, 6,000 National Guard troops to the border.
No states rejected those requests, by the way, back in 2006 and 2010. You've already got Oregon, Montana, potentially Nevada saying we don't want any part of this mission. I don't want to see states become part of the resistance to the commander-in-chief when it comes to deploying troops to defend
they should be
the sovereignty of our
trying to make sure illegal immigrants are not coming across the border.
Of
that
course.
caravan, by the way, there were all these news reports saying Mexico's breaking it up and, all's going to be well. And it turns out, well, it's dispersed a bit, but the caravan is still moving. So if it was 1,000 to 1,300 people, presumably it's only a couple or a few hundred people. We still don't know where they're going to wind up. Some were headed towards the southern border. But remember that original BuzzFeed story about this, and again, there were some reports suggesting around Wednesday that it was dispersed and it was broken up, but it's not.
Some of this, again, these policies this week, the impetus of that reality. If it's smaller groups, they still could be making a dash for the border and asylum. Maybe the policies will be in place by then. Again, to zero tolerance, what zero tolerance means, the second time you come through this country illegally, it's going to be a felony. Up to 2 years in prison, which they're hoping would be a deterrent, as opposed to the current policy, which is effectively a slap on the wrist.
Well, so there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
You wake up this morning, you think, okay, that's going on. National Guards are being sent to the border, but also dealing with China, dealing with Russia, North Korea. There's a lot. So the president putting more tariffs on China. And he says pain from China tariffs will make us much stronger, but it will pay off in the end. Here's what he said.
I'm not saying there won't be a little pain, but the market's gone up 40%, 42%, so we might lose a little bit of it. But we're going to have a much stronger country when we're finished, and that's what I'm all about. We have to do things that other people wouldn't do. So we may take a hit, and you know what? Ultimately, we're going to be much stronger for it.
This is a showdown. I mean, this president is willing to play brinksmanship with China and say, hey, we propose 50 billion, they propose 50 billion. We're proposing 100 billion.
Right.
What does China do next? They're also hoping to build a coalition of the willing with other countries to build a block of countries saying, China, no more unfair trade practices. He's saying, well, we might take a short-term hit. We have the ability to level the playing field finally after decades and decades of China eating our lunch and playing by different rules and pretending like they're a developing nation, but playing at the top level.
But the stock market took a hit of about 700 points yesterday.
Big hit. It has been so volatile.
Yeah.
There is volatility, and no one knows where this is going to end, and that is how the president likes to do things. He likes to sort of keep us on our toes, and people are very concerned about a potential trade war with China if it ultimately gets that far. We had Nigel Farage on the show earlier this morning. We asked him where he thinks this will go and how President Trump will be able to handle all of this, and here's what he told us.
Trump's a negotiator. You know, talk hard, then maybe concede a bit. He's much cleverer than anyone gives him credit for. The guy is playing chess. He's thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. Of that, I have no doubt.
And that's why the markets may calm down next week, because they may see that this is the president, you know, pushing China hard, saying enough, level the playing field here. That's what the American people appreciate largely, which is standing up to China for the first time in a long time.
I do think the president needs to articulate, though, exactly what he wants China to do to change their behavior. We talk about, you know, identity theft and those sorts of things, but what do they actually need to do so that we don't go to a trade war? Because that is a place no one wants to be. Ultimately.
I think it's a lot of it is compliance with basic WTO standards, which they're not in compliance with at all. And so it's not free trade because it's not fair trade. But if they come into compliance, now we are on a level playing field. I think he's on the winning side of this. I hope he plays even more brinksmanship, fights even further on this. These tariffs are proposed, by the way. They're not in place.
Right.
So keep fighting and bring China to their knees. Why not?
We will see.
It's about time.
We will see. All right, a lot of news this morning. We do want to bring you some other headlines we are following closely, starting with a Fox News alert. And a serious one, 14 killed in a horrific bus crash carrying a Canadian junior hockey team. While driving to a game, a semi collided with the bus, carrying players between the ages of 16 and 21, along with their coaches. Another 14 people are injured, 3 of them critically. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tweeting this: I cannot imagine what these parents are going through, and my heart goes out to everyone affected by this terrible tragedy. Also, violence intensifying in Gaza as demonstrators burn tires, filling the air with smoke, as you can see there, in hopes of blocking the view of Israeli snipers. The gunfire killing at least 9 Palestinian protesters, wounding nearly 500 others. Hamas militants declaring the second week of deadly demonstrations in their ongoing dispute over land. In total, at least 30 Palestinians have been killed, more than 1,000 injured. That one just keeps heating up.
Yeah, it does.
All right, coming up, what happened during that infamous tarmac meeting between former President Bill Clinton and former Attorney General Loretta Lynch? Remember, they said they were talking about grandkids. Well, we might finally get the real answer when the former Attorney General speaks out. But does she have an ulterior motive? Former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton, Philippe Reines, is here to react to all that next.
And a little boy spoiling his pregnant mom's surprise. The story behind this gender reveal fail.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
Now go and go.
Oh, no.
Nailed it.
Look at her.
Nailed it.
She's so mad.
She's like, you're in so much trouble right now. So what did happen on the tarmac? You remember that meeting between former President Bill Clinton, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, that became a bit of a campaign issue in 2016. Well, we might finally get an answer on Monday. That's when Lynch sits down with NBC News to talk about the meeting, and James Comey. Here with reaction, Philippe Reines, former senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Good morning, Philippe.
Good morning, Ed.
What's your recollection? I want to hear the Clinton side of this. What happened at that meeting in Arizona on the tarmac?
Loretta Lynch has actually already discussed this when it happened, within days. I mean, it sounds crazy. You and I travel, and everyone watching travels, and you think, who walks around, you know, runways without those big orange cones doing that? But you know, when you're the former President of the United States or the Attorney General or the Governor of California, which he also bumped into, it's basically bumping into people in the supermarket, as crazy as that sounds. And she was flying on a U.S. government jet that had the very distinctive blue and white United States of America emblazoned on it. And he said, who is it? And I know it sounds ridiculous, but he's Bill Clinton, and he said, let's go see who it is. And
that's a pretty good impersonation.
I mean, believe me, there's no one who would who would more not have done that than the people of the Clinton campaign. But there's no one who knows better that all he did was like, hey, you got any food in here?
Well, okay, but you're right. I mean, on one hand, it does sound strange. It's like, oh gosh, we all travel all the time and we bump into famous people. On the other hand, Bill Clinton's wife at the time was under FBI investigation on the email server, fair or unfair, and the Attorney General oversees the FBI. So shouldn't a former president have been a bit more careful about going, because it wasn't a 5-minute meet and greet, as I recall, it was a half hour, 40 minutes.
I don't remember how it was more than a few minutes. I think it was somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. But yeah, look, I think everyone in hindsight wish it hadn't happened, starting with Loretta Lynch, starting with Bill Clinton. And the notion of what this has turned into about what was discussed, what happened there, the people who suffered most for that encounter were Secretary Clinton and, by extension, the Clinton family and the Clinton, because what happened from there was it looked tainted. The first thing that was said by Loretta Lynch was it was unfortunate, and I am going to, in an abundance of caution, I'm going to make sure that whatever Jim Comey and the career professionals bring to me as a recommendation, I'm going to accept it.
As you say, tainted. This is what James Comey said it would happen. Watch.
I'm not picking on the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, who I like very much, but her meeting with President Clinton on that airplane was the capper for me. And I then said, you know what? The department cannot, by itself, credibly end this.
So if she's already addressed this, and they were talking about grandkids and their golf games, Philippe, bottom line question, why does she have to come out now? Is it because James Comey's about to come out on the book tour and everybody wants to get their story straight?
I wouldn't say story straight, but yeah, clearly it's because of the book. He's got a book coming out, I guess, in a week. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing, and I think people want to make it clear. I would take what she's saying and or wanting to say as reinforcement that there's no there because she wants to say straight out, it was absurd, but this is what happened. And look, I hope she comes on Fox and says the same thing.
Well, and finally, I want to go back to my first question.
I hope she comes on Fox and doesn't attack you for your athletic prowess.
That would be nice, but I got 10 seconds. That's funny. Which is, what did they talk about? I want to get it on the record from the Clinton side. Did they just talk about grandkids, or did they talk about
I think it was chit-chat. I think it was chit-chat, and I know from them that there was food set out, and they did a little grazing of the, like, cheese tray. No, he worked, you know, he hired her 20 years earlier.
Okay, so it was a buffet. It wasn't about the investigation. Well, to be continued. Philippe, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Coming up, a West Virginia mom burst into tears, telling the president just how much tax cuts mean to her and her family. She and her husband are here live. Next.
I just want to say thank you. I said I wasn't going to cry. This is a big deal. These tax cuts are a big deal. Thank you for fighting for us.
Numbers are falling, so it must be time for news by the numbers. First, 9 under par. That's the leading score at the Masters, held by Patrick Reed, an American. Heading into round 3, the 27-year-old holding a 2-shot lead, with rain expected today at Augusta National. Next, $200. That's the fine people will have to pay in New Shoreham, Rhode Island, if you're caught with a balloon. The small town banning residents from buying or using the party favors, calling them a danger to wildlife. Wow, nanny state gone wild. And finally, 7. That's how many days a week Chick-fil-A could reportedly serve customers in Las Vegas. This would reportedly end the store's closed on Sunday policy, but it's only for the location on the Strip. We're going to reach out to Chick-fil-A for more info. Could it be that even Chick-fil-A loses its values in Las Vegas? Abby?
Pete, as they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Thank you so much. All right, well, President Trump holding a roundtable in West Virginia on Thursday, talking to families and businesses benefiting from tax cuts. And one West Virginia mother, she got emotional telling the president how much it means to her and to her family. Watch this.
I just want to say thank you. I said I wasn't going to cry. Gosh. I just want to say thank you to you for the tax cuts. This is a big deal for our family. This is a big deal. These tax cuts are a big deal. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for fighting for us. Thank you for caring enough to allow us the opportunity to come here and tell you thank you to your face. My boys, my little 10-year-old wants to be president one day. And
It'll happen.
A pretty powerful video. Jessica Hodge is the woman in that video, and she joins us this morning along with her husband, Tony Hodge. They both were at Thursday's event and join us this morning. Great to have both of you with us. Thanks for being here so early.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So, Jessica, so many people have now seen that video, and it's so real, it's so raw, it's so emotional. So few people get the opportunity to look the president in the eye and to personally thank him for something that they have done to impact their life. What was that like for you?
It was an amazing experience. I really feel that God opened the door for our family to have that opportunity, and I just really wanted to express to the president how much he meant to our family and how much these tax cuts meant to our family. I kind of felt like I was representing West Virginia in a way, and then just working moms, middle-class moms, and I just wanted to be able to say thank you to him. And you know, I got a little emotional. I got to see my boys out there in the audience sharing the experience with me, and I just lost it a little.
I mean, you represent so many in West Virginia, Jessica, but so many families throughout the country, both you and your husband, Tony. I mean, Jessica, you've worked as an administrator in a dentist office for a number of years, and Tony as a mail carrier since you were 21 years old for 15 years. You talk about these tax cuts and how they're not just peanuts to you and your family. They really have made an impact on how you live every single day. How has your life changed? Tony.
Well, I mean, you know, this is real money to us. We're a middle-class family, and this is money that we can take and use. Like I told the president the other day, we've improved our home. We've done some different things with this money. It helps our local economy, so we're just really appreciative. We're so appreciative to be able to tell the president to his face and thank him for his leadership on this issue. You know, I feel like it wouldn't have got done if he hadn't taken the lead on this, so we're appreciative to the president on this.
Jessica, so West Virginia, the president won 68% of the vote there. We're now, what, over a year into his presidency. What is the mood there on the ground in that state? How do people feel things are going for them personally?
I think that West Virginia really loves President Trump. I know that everybody in our circles really love him. We think that he really, you know, he cares about normal working class people. He's not, you know, he just really cares, and he's genuine, and I think that he really listens to us and he fights for us. And, you know, for everyone in our circles, we're very appreciative of all the work that he's doing for us.
So you have two sons. You have Hayden, who's 10, and Lennon, who is 7. You said they both want to be president one day. And Tony, on Thursday, you actually mentioned that to the president. Your wife did. They want to be president. He said, well, they will be. What were your son's reaction to that event and to just wanting to be president? Is that something they still want to do after all that?
Oh, yes, ma'am. They were so excited. They just kept going on, and then when we left the facility there, they said, you know, when the president said that to me, I just thought, wow, that's such an encouragement. That encourages me so much. And to hear our 10-year-old say that, and Lynn, our 7-year-old, you know, he's following up right behind him, and they were just so excited. And it's a real goal for them. They really want this, you know, so we're going to be right behind them the whole way.
Well, I have no doubt they both have some bright futures ahead with great parents like both of you. Jessica, Tony, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for being on with us this morning. Really great having you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Coming up on the show, a Chicago suburb moves to make assault weapons illegal. They claim it will make their town safer. Are they right? We're going to discuss that straight ahead. And the DOJ agrees to allow extraordinary access to FISA applications. What does all of that mean? Well, we're going to ask former House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz. Walking in right now. What's up next? Hey, Jason.
Well, it's your shot of the morning, and who really could forget this great Fox and Friends moment? A little bit. Yeah!
Give it to him! Yes, sir!
Give it to him now! Oh, sorry. Gowdy, the better man won.
I was defeated by Ed Henry to 3-point shooting.
Ed requested we play that every single morning of the show. I kid you not. All right, well, now Pete is getting a chance
Look,
at
Rick's
some
out there.
redemption. There's Rick out golfing in honor of the Masters, and courtesy of WOW Entertainment, we have our own mini Masters set up on the plaza this morning. So later, Pete.
I haven't played putt-putt since last summer at the when I was camping. So we're going to put my skills to the
He's
test.
already making excuses.
Yeah, I'm not making
He does
excuses.
this a lot.
I'm making predictions. I'm saying I'm going to easily win victory.
But it actually looks tougher than your average putt-putt. It looks like it has levels.
Looks like we both might have serious
Well, joining us now, we've got Jason Chaffetz,
Rick,
former
nice job.
GOP Utah governor and former House Oversight Committee chairman, and of course a Fox News contributor. Well, first of all, your thoughts. Who's going to win this battle?
Come on.
My athleticism, I'm putting all my money on Abby.
I love it.
Do you want to play with us?
He's a Utah man.
We should get him in the mix. You like golf, right?
Oh, I do
BYU.
like golf. Yeah, I got an airplane to get on, though.
He
But
played football at BYU. You know that,
well,
right?
I was a place kicker. I wasn't an actual football
Oh,
player.
one of those.
Yeah.
They touch me, they throw a flag. You know?
All right, let's talk serious stuff. We're talking about throwing flags in Washington. There's all kinds of chaos, the FISA abuse, all this. And in all seriousness, people want to see accountability, finally. And last night, there was a very late development as we were going to bed that finally members of the House and Senate are going to get a look at those FISA applications. Is this for real, or is it another maneuver?
I don't know. This will be the third time that they've gone over. It's called an in-camera review. When the Department of Justice or another agency won't let you see something, a member can go over there, no notes, no staff. They basically watch you read the document.
Because they're sensitive.
But Gowdy has gone over there twice, and when he's been over there, they've had so much redacted, he's kind of thrown up his arms. So now they're having him come back a third time to read. And I tell you, you ask the question, what is it that you think Congress should not see? And there's not a really good answer to that. And Congress, the American people fund it, and their representatives ought to be able to see that. Gowdy, Nunes, you know, they have, Mike Conaway, they have the highest security level there is.
Right.
But they're hiding this stuff and have for
Is it redacted
years.
because it's sensitive, or is it redacted because they don't want to admit malfeasance?
My experience is most of this is redacted, not for classification purposes, but because it's embarrassing, and they don't want light to be shed on what
Well, that's not
Why
a
wouldn't
enough reason.
Attorney General Sessions want that light, though? I mean, because his people are saying, we're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to keep up with these requests. We've doubled the amount of agents looking at documents so we can push them to Chairman Goodlatte. And we're making it available so anyone can look at these FISA applications. Do you feel like they're acting in good faith at DOJ?
Unfortunately, that's void of fact and with truth. I mean, these has been under investigation. I issued a subpoena back in 2016. Nunes issued one in August of 2017. Bob Goodlatte just issued another subpoena, nothing to do with Russia and the FISA applications, on a closed case, and his deadline is come and gone. If the Department of Justice issued a subpoena on you and you didn't comply, you'd be in handcuffs.
Yeah, you would. So
it really scares me that level of just, hey, we're going to push back on Congress. But Congress never stands up for itself. That's why they continue to get away with it.
Sure. You would know that well, working very closely on that committee. All right, so we all remember that infamous tarmac meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the plane. They say they talked about grandkids, maybe a little golf. But we may learn a little bit more about that in the next couple of weeks. Loretta Lynch is supposed to do an interview on NBC Monday, and that is right before the book tour that James Comey is doing the following week. What do you think is going to come out of that?
Remember, this is a meeting that they didn't want anybody to know about. It was a local reporter that actually found this. And this meeting on the tarmac was days before Bill Clinton's wife was due to interact with the FBI. And now we know that there was months before that James Comey and his crew were actually drafting the exoneration. So it does. I mean, it's highly suspicious. Loretta Lynch, I think, is my guess. She's getting out of this because of the book tour, but probably even more importantly, the Inspector General report is going to come back on this. And fortunately, you know, Horowitz and the Inspector General there at the Department of Justice, they have been looking at this for well more than a year. And I think by the first week of May, you're going to actually see that report.
So you think there might be daylight between Loretta Lynch and James Comey? We saw him testifying, saying he didn't like the fact that meeting occurred. So possibly this is preempting his book and saying, no, this is what really happened.
Preempting the book, but I think she also knows that the Inspector General is going to come out with this. Remember, it was Comey who came out and said, oh, he was furious about this meeting, but He had been drafting the exoneration for months before, and then he stood before the American people, and remember what he told everybody? Nobody at the Department of Justice knows what I'm going to say. Well, that's not true, because his whole cast of characters was out there talking about it before.
Wait, this is heresy. You're questioning St. Comey.
It's going to be a busy few weeks ahead, Jason.
Yes.
We will watch it closely.
Illuminating.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry you can't stick around for golf.
Yeah. All right. Turning now to some other headlines we're following closely this morning. ICE agents arresting 97 illegal immigrants in what some are calling the largest workplace raid in a decade. The roundup happening at a meat processing plant in East Tennessee. Immigration advocates saying most were from Mexico. And of course, it's coming as the Trump administration cracks down on employers who unknowingly hire undocumented immigrants. All right, take a look at this dash cam video showing a fiery high-speed chase crossing state lines. Starting in Indiana, a suspect taking off in a stolen Jeep, speeding up to 120 miles per hour into Michigan, flames shooting out from the truck's undercarriage when police veer into the suspect's vehicle. Police ordering them out of the Jeep. The driver and 2 passengers were then arrested. Yikes. All right, we'll talk about an epic fail. A son ruining his mom's gender reveal party by popping the pink confetti-filled balloon with his toy sword right before the party started. The Florida mom staring at her son, as you can imagine, in total disbelief.
Rick, what's the weather?
I feel like these things are getting out of hand, these gender
reveals. You just can't top it, you know?
I know. I'm kind of happy for that kid.
There was an alligator one a couple weeks ago.
That alligator one was crazy.
Yeah.
People are feeling emptiness in their lives.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Pete, I'm going to let you ponder that for a second while I do the weather, and then I'll ask you how you feel about your response. Take a look at the weather map, show you what's going on. I tell you what, we cannot buy spring across parts of at least the easternmost part of the country. Right now, 12 degrees in Rapid City, 13 in Minneapolis. You get the idea. It feels like straight up winter. Down across the southeast, you've been really warm. You've had some great temperatures and beautiful sunny skies. That's about to change. Things really cooling down. Here you go across the northeast mid-Atlantic. We have rain down across parts of the mid-Atlantic. We'll see some snow, especially across the higher elevations in towards the central Appalachians. But aside from that, not a major problem. Down to the south, we have more severe weather today across areas of the central Gulf Coast, across parts of northern Florida as well later on today. Behind that, look at that. 44 for a high temperature in Dallas, and that is some snow in Woodward, Oklahoma. Towards the northern plains, it is just a chilly one, not getting above freezing, unfortunately, in Bismarck, North Dakota. All right, guys.
Yikes.
Wow.
That's a pretty brutal map. Thank you, Rick.
It is.
You bet.
I'm not going to comment anymore. People can do whatever
Just
they
read the
want.
teas,
It's
Pete.
America. All right, a Chicago suburb moves to make assault weapons illegal, claiming it will make the town safer. Well, our next guest is from Chicago. His brother survived a shooting, and he says this move is just for PR.
Plus, parents in North Carolina are outraged after their kids bring home a paper explaining white privilege. Is this appropriate? We'll ask a former professor who's all over it just ahead.
Daydream, walking with his head down. I'm the one he's walking to. So call it what you want, yeah, call it what you want to. My baby.
Well, welcome back. As the gun debate heats up around the country, one Illinois town has moved to make so-called assault weapons illegal. Deerfield, Illinois' Village Board voted unanimously to ban the purchase, possession, and manufacture of so-called assault rifles and high-capacity magazines, claiming it will make the town safer from mass shootings. Well, law-abiding residents have until June 13th to get rid of their weapons or face a fine of up to $1,000 per day. Here to react, Chicago native and Fox News contributor Jono Caldwell. Jono, thanks for being here this morning. Appreciate it. So Chicago has a gun problem, and your family, you've experienced that firsthand in your family. Deerfield is different, though. An upper middle class community hasn't had a murder in 5 years, yet they say banning AR-15s is going to make a difference. Is this about safety, or is this a statement?
Well, I think it's a PR move. And by the way, I saw the previous segments. I challenged you and Ed Henry to a basketball tournament.
Oh, man.
But moving on, though.
You're on.
We're here. Moving on, though. This is legitimately, to me, a PR situation. And I tell you, a couple different reasons. One, if you look at the data, simply put, from 2012 to 2016, how many murders have Deerfield, Illinois experienced? 0. in each year. This isn't a city which has an issue with gun violence. To the contrary, actually, it's a very safe city, and it's safer than 80+% of American cities throughout the country. So when you look at those numbers, you look at the data, simply put, you know that out of a town of 19,000 people, there's probably one, maybe two that actually own the AR-15. So this isn't something that I think is a legitimate issue for the town and something that they really shouldn't be dealing with.
Gianno, to your point, the Deerfield Mayor, Harriet Rosenthal, had this to say about the ban. She said, "We hope that our local decision helps spur state and national leaders to take steps to make our communities safer." So she's basically saying, we hope this spurs others, acknowledging that this is about a larger point, not her city.
Right, yeah, and I think that's where we run into a larger problem, because you're utilizing taxpayers' dollars to make a political statement. And considering all the violence that happens in Chicago and things that happen in Parkland, Florida, I don't think this is an appropriate time to try to make politics out of a legitimate situation that impact people's lives. And that's exactly what this mayor is doing. So when it comes time for the voters to think about who their mayor is going to be, do you want somebody that's going to run a marketing campaign? Or do you want somebody who's going to look at your issues in a very serious and legitimate way? And I think that's the question for the city of Deerfield residents at this particular point.
Briefly, Gianno, I mean, you're in your family, you've experienced gun violence. Guns are supposed to be tightly restricted inside the bounds of Chicago, yet we see gun violence there. Is getting rid of guns the answer, or is responsible gun ownership the answer?
I'm always go to the latter, responsible gun ownership. And yes, I experienced it with my little brother, who almost lost his life. His best friend died in his arms. So I understand what's involved here. And I tell you, even after that situation occurred with my little brother last year during Memorial Day weekend, his biggest regret is not having his own legally owned and obtained gun. That was his biggest concern after the fact, and biggest regret, because his best friend lost his life and literally died in his arms.
And he, in this country, has the right to a legally owned firearm just as much as someone from a state where you can carry concealed or open carry. That's the debate we're having in this nation. Gialdo Caldwell, thanks for getting up very early for us in California this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got it, man. And we'll see you on that three-point contest. I don't know if I want any part of it.
Absolutely. We here.
All right. Parents in North Carolina are outraged after their kids bring home a paper explaining white privilege. And it's not part of the curriculum. It was sent home by the PTA, not your mother's PTA. Is this appropriate? We'll ask a former professor next. Plus, we've got Dan Bongino, Reince Priebus. I think we've even got peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. I think I saw them in the green room. Here, coming up live.
Welcome back. Well, parents in North Carolina are outraged after their kids brought home a paper on white privilege.
The handout is not part of the formal curriculum, but sent from the PTA as a guide for parents focusing on racial equity in society. But is this appropriate to send home with students? Here to discuss is former Vanderbilt professor and candidate for the mayor of Nashville, Carol Swain. Professor, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, and good luck in your mayoral race. So if you were a parent or anybody that sees this come home, what's behind the idea that the PTA should be reminding kids that they have white privilege?
Well, it's part of the ongoing indoctrination that I believe is designed to instill shame and guilt among white youth. I believe it's inappropriate. I would not want my children or grandchildren exposed to this. The problem with it is that it's misguided. They're confusing social class with white privilege. There are whites, blacks, Hispanics. Privilege is colorblind. It all depends on your resources. And so I think that it's something that certainly a second grader is not going to be able to understand. It's
Well, their whole point, it seemed, was to help them understand. Let's just show our audience an example of part of the handout that was given to these students. It says, Step 3, begin to understand the concept of white privilege. Governors, 96% white. President, vice president, 100% white. Current POTUS cabinet, 91% white. Teachers, 83% white. And owners of men's pro football teams, 97% white. You say that this ultimately could have the opposite effect of what they're wanting.
Yes, because I think that by the time the young people, they get it again and again and again, and it's not sensitizing them to racial differences. I think it's very polarizing, and it's a form of shaming for some white youth, and I would not want my child exposed to that. I believe it's misguided.
So what do you think the answer is?
You know,
Carol, what do you think the answer is? What should be taught in these schools?
I think that we should be teaching everyone to respect each other. That I don't believe that causing one race to feel guilty about things that happened, you know, generations ago is going to bring us together. The problems that separate whites and blacks, a lot of it has to do with economics and culture and social class. And I don't believe that a child at that age, second graders, should be exposed to things that they really can't understand. And I think for the minority students, it hurts them as well because it causes them to see themselves as victims.
It's so true. If you don't understand it, it becomes a form of indoctrination. Carol Swain, candidate for the mayor of Nashville, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will note that we reached out to the school's principal for comment and have yet to hear back, but we'll stay on that story for sure. All right, coming up, the White House says EPA Chief Scott Pruitt has done a good job amid his controversies. So will he stay or will he go? We're going to ask former White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. He's made a few decisions like that.